This is the meeting of the Washoe County School District Audit Committee, Thursday, November 5th, 2020, beginning at 3:32 p.m. And we're also on YouTube. And so to get the meeting going, we'll call the meeting to order. Let's see if I have a, there, sounds like a gavel. And Jean, if you want to go ahead and take roll call.
Terry Avancino.
Here.
Ben Bartow. Oh, I think.
Yep.
Tom Doyle.
Here.
Ronald Ellis.
Here.
Ron Regal. Not here. Todd Shipley.
Here.
And Jennifer Thomas.
Here.
Okay. I think we're good, so we will move on. Item 1.03 is the public comment period. Based upon the orders of the school district, the way the public comment works is anybody can send in public comments by email. The comments based on policy, I guess, it will not be read, but they will be put into the record. Jean, can you advise if we have any public comments and who they're from?
We received public comment from Jeff Church. That's all.
Okay, thank you. See, the next one is action to adopt agenda. Jean, was there a request to change to the agenda, I believe? Item 2.09 was to be removed.
Yes.
So 209 was discussion possible action to send to the board policy 9225, reporting of fraud, audit, waste, and abuse. So that policy will not go forward today, obviously. So the one agenda item to be changed is to eliminate 2.09. Are there any other requests for other agenda items to be modified? Okay.
No.
We'll entertain a motion.
I'll do it. I, Ronald Ellis, move that the audit committee remove agenda item 2.09 and adopt the remainder of the agenda as presented.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Is that the correct way to do it, Gene? All opposed? I guess that works. So if nobody says nay, we don't have to identify nays. So everybody has said aye. Moving on. So now we'll go on to the items. 2.01, discussion and possible action to select the audit committee chairperson for what is called a one-year term ending June 30th of 2021. It is technically going to be less than a year since we're already in November. At this point, I will entertain a motion for anybody who wants to nominate a chairman or chairperson. Sorry, my apologies.
This is Terry Avancino. I'd like to nominate Tom Doyle.
Any other nominations at this point? Okay, it looks like as long as Tom Doyle is willing and able, then he will be nominated. And I guess at this point, it will be for item 2.01. All of those in favor of Tom Doyle being the chairperson until next June 30th, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
Tom,
I better say aye also. Sorry about that. Okay.
could we
So-
just have somebody make the motion and somebody second it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I need somebody to make the motion. Terry, go ahead.
Terry Avancino, I move to nominate Tom Doyle as chairman of the audit committee.
I, Ronald Ellis, move that the audit committee elect Tom Doyle as audit committee chairperson for a one-year term ending June 30, 2021.
Okay, and I'll assume that we have a second on that.
There was the second.
Second, yep, he's second. So
Second.
Therefore, we'll move forward now with the vote. I'll get this right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is carried. Item number 2 is 2.02, discussion and possible action to select Audit Committee Vice Chairperson for a 1-year term ending June 30th, 2021. Of course, I'm awful tempted to just ask for a volunteer, but if anybody would like to nominate somebody.
I'll do it to volunteer if nobody else wants to, or we could nominate Ron Riegel since he's not here.
Ron sent a secret email asking that he not be nominated
Okay.
at this point in time due to his workload. So that was a good try, though. Any other nominations? Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve Ron Ellis to be the vice chairperson, using correct terminology, until June 30th, 2021.
I, Ben Bartow, second the motion.
Any comments? All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, motion is carried. Congratulations, Ron. Moving on to item 2.03, the approval of the minutes of the February 13, 2020 Audit Committee meeting for a possible action. Any commentary on the notes on the minutes of the meeting, corrections, anything of that nature?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to recuse myself from this involvement since I wasn't a member of the committee.
That's understood. I believe we have enough to. Gene, I may need guidance on this. If we don't have enough people attend the committee, we'll probably need one of the new members to vote in favor of it anyway. If there's no further, sorry about that. But if
I'm not really sure what.
Pardon?
It's not,
Neil?
it's, excuse me, it's fine for people who weren't there to vote. They can just put on the record that they're voting just for purposes of the open meeting law, and that they can't attest to basically what Ron just said is fine, except he can go ahead and vote. So he's saying, look, I wasn't there, but I'm voting for purposes of the open meeting law. It's fine.
Okay, would anybody else like to make a similar statement prior to the vote?
I, Ben Bartow, wasn't present for the February meeting, but I approve the meeting minutes for the purposes of the record.
And Jen?
I second that motion and share the same sentiment.
Gene, I think that's sufficient enough for a motion and a second. So at this point in time, we are going to vote to approve the meeting minutes from February 13th, 2020, which was the most recent meeting of the audit committee due to COVID-19. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let it show the motion is carried. Moving on to item 2.04, introduction of the new audit committee members, Ben Bartow, Ron Ellis, and Jen Thomas. And so what I would like to do is for each of you, and then also we'll go on to Eve, who's joined as a new auditor. We'd like to each of you just to give maybe a 30-second background on your interest in the audit committee and your actual background. Ben, if you want to go ahead and start.
Yeah. Hey guys, thanks for having me. My name's Ben Bartow. Originally from Michigan, moved out to Reno recently, lived downtown here. I work for BDO. I'm a risk compliance manager on our risk advisory team here, working for the casinos locally and and also some clients in San Francisco. Actually focus more on the IT audit and less so on the financial audit, but I do know how to make my way through a balance sheet. Mom was a teacher, always been interested in public education, so thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of get my feet wet and see how things go. Thank you.
Great. Welcome aboard. Ron, if you want to make your own introduction, please.
Okay, well, I'm Ron Ellis. I was originally from Las Vegas, Nevada. I have approximately 30 years of experience in the casino gaming sector. I left the casino gaming sector in February, joined the Utah Transit Authority in June to take my first foray into the public sector, and I'm having a lot of fun. So my interest in the Washoe County School District, my home is still in Reno. I live part-time in Salt Lake City, commute back to Reno most weekends. And, I have 2 teenage daughters in the Washoe County School District. So that's my interest in the district. Plus, I hear Kirk is absolutely amazing at his job. So I'm hoping I'm hoping I have a resource now to draw on.
That's great, and congratulations on being one of the remaining frequent flyer miles for Southwest or Delta, whichever it is.
Delta.
Delta, yeah, I figured. Okay, welcome aboard, Ron.
Thank you.
Jen?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I also am new to Reno. I've only been here about a year. Before that, I was in London for 3 years. And before that, kind of various places throughout the United States. Professionally, I work at Oracle. I'm director of the stock services team. So my team handles all things around stock, equity compensation. But in that role, I have a lot of interaction with legal, with tax. I do a lot of audit work. And I saw this opening. I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old both at DePauli Middle right now. And I thought signing up to be on the audit committee would be a great way for me to start meeting some new people and also starting to get engaged more with the school, because so far the bits that I've seen, I've been really impressed with, and I'd like to continue to see Washoe County really make some significant improvements academically and deal with all the influx of population, et cetera, that we're looking at.
Excellent. Well, welcome aboard, and the weather's going to turn freezing cold, so you should feel more comfortable like you did from London. So.
Thank you.
So yeah, welcome aboard, Jen.
Thanks.
Kirk, you want to go ahead and introduce Eve a little bit, then we'll have Eve introduce herself after that.
Yeah, definitely. Eve Manolo is new to our office. She started in July, and she's going to be a great addition. She's been working for the district for a few years in the special ed department, and so she's just getting started here. She's a CPA and has numerous years of experience working in a school district in California in the financial area. So I think she's going to be wonderful. She's been a pleasure to work with, so we love having her. And here she goes.
Sounds great. Eve, you want to go ahead and make a few comments for the group and your interest?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you, Kirk. I appreciate working for Kirk, and I second Ron's comment that Kirk is a great guy to work for. I started with internal audit in April 20th. I was with special ed, hired in October 2017, so I've been with the district for 3 years now. I'm from California. I got certified public accountant there about 20, 30 years ago, graduate of UC Berkeley. And I worked for West Contra Costa Unified School District in California for 8 years before moving to Washington, another 16 years. And now I'm back in Nevada, so I can be closer to family in the Bay Area. But I enjoy working for the school district and supporting the schools. So thank you for having me.
Great.
Welcome aboard, Eve. Kirk, any other comments?
No, just thank you everybody for your time and effort and for being on the committee. Much appreciated. We're looking forward to your input. So thank you all.
Thank you. We will move on to item 2.05, and this is the discussion and possible action to recommend the Washoe County School District audit to be sent to the Board of Trustees. That's the audit for the period ended June 30th of 2020. And I think we're going to have a nice presentation now from Rob Luna, and I assume you may be sharing your screen also, or up to you how you want to do it.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Doyle. Good afternoon, everybody. For the record, I'm Rob Luna, Controller for the district. I'll start with introductions first of the team. We've got a few people here who are going to present to us today the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, also known as the CAFR, for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2020. From Crow LLP, we have Jeff Jensen, who's our engagement partner, and Charles Rabley, who's our senior manager. I'd like to point out that Crow is new to auditing the district for this year. We went through a competitive RFP process last spring, and Crow was the successful bidder. On the district side of the house, we have Mark Mathers, Chief Financial Officer, Robbie Carson, Assistant Controller, and Jill Murdoch, Grant Fiscal Administrator. We'll try to answer all your questions along the way. Mr. Jensen and Mr. Rabley are going to follow an outline that summarizes some of the major topics. They're going to start with the auditor's responsibilities, the scope of the audit, the timeline. Then they'll go into general financial information and some highlights, and then they'll have their conclusions. Before I turn it over to Mr. Jensen and Mr. Rabley, I'm going to ask them to tell us briefly just a little bit about Crow, who they are, and then they can proceed with their presentation. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a new normal here of meeting via Zoom versus being able to walk in a room and shake all of your hands and introduce myself. But Rob did a nice job of introducing us briefly here. Again, I'm Jeff Jensen, the engagement partner with Crow. For those of you that might not be familiar with Crow, Crow is the 9th largest firm in the country. We specialize in many different things, from audit, tax, and consulting services. We have a very large presence in the public sector, including Ron in the transit space there. So I know we just started working actually with, I think it might be even Utah Transit there.
It is, and I just want to address that, just for public disclosure. I was on the selection committee selecting Crow before I was actually on the Washoe County School District Audit Committee. So I just want to disclose that. I don't see any conflict of interest with it, but I was part of the procurement committee for selecting Crow.
All right. Well, I didn't even know that, so that's good to hear. But anyways, I'm based in Sacramento, California, just over the hill from you all, and enjoying one last day of warm weather here before the cold weather hits us as well, and heads your way there too. So I'll let Charles. I've been doing this for over 20 years now. I started in public accounting as an intern with the predecessor to Crow, and have been working with school districts and community colleges since I was an intern. So it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I've really enjoyed getting to know Washoe over the last 9 months here of the audit process. I'll let Charles take a second to introduce himself as well.
Sure. Charles Ribley, senior manager with Crow. I'm actually based in our San Francisco office, but these days, I guess it doesn't really, there's not a big differentiation of what office I'm based out of. I'm based anywhere. Basically, I'm online. I've been with Crow just over 15 years. I've spent the majority of my career working in the government and not-for-profit practice, and within the government side, most of the time I spent 95% of my government time is spent with K-12 school districts, and this is a really interesting, and it's been a very good opportunity to be involved with Washoe County School District, and appreciate the chance to get to work with the district and management and the preparation of the CAFR.
Very good. So Charles and Jeff, were you going to Did you want to share your screen, or are you just?
Sure, that'd be great. We can do that. I think Charles is
I'm queuing it up right now.
ready
Yeah,
to do that.
All right, very good.
test my technological skills this far into the pandemic.
Charles, are you gonna? There you go. Well,
How's that?
Looks good.
that work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. Then we'll jump right into our summary of audit results here. And I think we have good news to bring to the committee's attention today. Like Rob said, we have several slides here to kind of frame up the audit process and the results that we have. And so we'll walk through those with you now. The first is our responsibility as your auditors. You hired us to form and express an opinion on the financial statements that are prepared by management. There's a lot of work that goes into that process, looking at a number of accounts throughout the district's financial system, as well as looking at controls and compliance as well, and forming, again, that opinion on whether your financial statements at the end of the day are free of material misstatement. So at the start of the whole process is the evaluating the risk of material misstatement to your financial position, and then developing audit procedures and evaluating controls to determine whether, essentially, when we look at your financial systems and processes, are they reliable enough to be able to produce reliable information that then produces an audit financial statements? And so,
just 1 second, just to interrupt. Apology, but is anybody else having problems seeing the entire screen?
Yeah, the screen seems to be cut off.
I noticed that too. I didn't know if that was just me. Charles, maybe we just go, it was fine outside of the slide deck mode there. So maybe just go back to that.
Switch back. Yeah, I apologize. Let me switch that. Can you see that at this point?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's fine. I think that's large enough for everybody too, so we're okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Sorry about that. So at the onset of the work that we do, obviously we step back and we look at what risks may be significant related to your financial statements and the process that goes into ensuring those financial statements are free of material misstatement. And from there, we then develop the internal control processes that we need to evaluate. And then obviously then that goes into the accounts that we need to test and to the significance of how much work we have to do in each of those areas in order to be able to, for me as the engagement partner at the end of the day, to be able to sign that audit opinion saying that your financial statements are free of material misstatement. So as Rob mentioned, this is our first year working with you all, so we are starting fresh. At the time of doing all the RFP, we didn't know we would be doing this audit fully remotely, but we've been able to successfully execute that and still complete this audit on time. So it was a little interesting at times there, but management was extremely cooperative and the rest of the team really to be able to still do everything we had to do for an audit. Nothing changed from that perspective. To be able to still produce an audit report at the end of the day. So our work began back in May and June, and that included doing internal control assessments and some of our initial interviews and discussions. All of those were done in a mechanism like this via Zoom or Teams. And so we're able to get that initial file documentation done. The next major section of work was done in late August and September when the numbers were made available for us to be able to actually audit the balances of the district and the different funds of your financial statements, and ultimately conclude the audit here at the end of October by able to produce the final CAFR here, which came out to 333 pages. So a lot of information is tucked away in that report, but ultimately, at the end of the day, an unmodified opinion was produced, which is the type of opinion you want on your audit report. On the next slide, we talk about new accounting pronouncements, which also took kind of a different turn this year.
Sorry, it's not cooperating. Give me 1 second. There we go.
All right. Initially, we thought the district would have to implement GASB 84 on fiduciary activities for fiscal 20. However, one bright light of 2020, if you will, has been that GASB deferred any new accounting guidance or new treatments for 1 year. So GASB 84 will now be applicable for fiscal 21 instead of fiscal 20. And then another significant GASB that's on the horizon for the district will be leases, and that is now fiscal 22 instead of fiscal 21. So both of those deferments were obviously well received by everybody there to not have to deal with that in addition to everything else this year. So that was done through GASB 95, was actually the standard that was implemented this year that provided the deferment or the postponement, if you will, of these other significant GASBs by 12 months. The next thing we wanted to cover with you would be any audit adjustments. And I'm happy to report that there were no audit adjustments. So the numbers that were given to us to start our audit are the same numbers that are coming back to you all with the opinion on there without any modification. So again, great news to be able to report that there were no audit adjustments. We did have one uncorrected misstatement. And an uncorrected misstatement are essentially smaller differences that we track as we go through the audit to make sure they don't aggregate into a material number that would then misstate your financial statements. And so we did have one uncorrected misstatement. It was an adjustment that was identified by management during the audit process. And essentially it relates to your capital assets, where there was land that was purchased in the prior year that should have been added at that time to your capital asset listing. And instead it was identified and added in the current year. In addition, there was some work in process that should have been expensed that initially was capitalized. So essentially we have some timing differences across a fiscal year. When we look at these from a June 30th, 2020 perspective, the financial statements are materially correct, and they're presented, all these things have been properly accounted for at June 30th, 2020. Essentially why we have an uncorrected misstatement is that there's a question as to whether at July 1st, 2019, those balances essentially are in the right bucket between 2019 and 2020. But again, they don't cause a material misstatement to your financial statements, so therefore it's an uncorrected difference from that perspective. And again, everything was fixed up during 2020 so that at June 30, 2020, there are no issues or misstatements there. As your auditors, we're required to communicate to you certain matters that relate to the audit. And so that's essentially what this slide is attempting to do, which is to say that we had no difficulties encountered in dealing with management. Everyone was extremely cooperative. And I would certainly appreciate the support and everything that the whole team went through this year, doing it all virtually and still being able to complete the audit on time without any significant difficulties. We also had no disagreements with management, and we're not aware of any other consultations with other accountants. And so what this means is essentially, if the Washoe team disagreed with an opinion that Charles and I had on how they should account for something, and they called our competitor down the street to opinion shop and kind of pit auditor versus auditor, we would want to bring that to your attention because that's a significant concern within the audit world. And so we don't have any of those matters to bring to the committee's attention. And then lastly, we don't have any significant or adverse events that require your attention in connection with the completion of the audit. So in other words, we didn't uncover any fraud or abuse or anything like that needs to be brought to the committee's attention. And certainly if we had found any of that, we wouldn't be discussing that today. We would have discussed that a long time ago during the audit process. So nothing else really of significance to bring to the committee's attention. So there are essentially two opinions that we provide as part of completing the audit. The first is related to the financial statements. As I alluded to already, there's an unmodified opinion related to your financial statements. So that's a clean opinion. That's a type of opinion, again, you want your auditors to be providing to you at the end of the audit process. So we have no modification to what we would report as standard related to your financial statements. And then also related to federal compliance. So because of the magnitude of the amount of federal dollars that the district expends and during the fiscal year, we're required to do a federal audit as well. And so we've accomplished that, and you received an unmodified opinion related to federal compliance. In the current year, we had to audit special education and the National School Lunch Program. So those were two of the programs that were tested as part of your federal compliance for this year. And for those of you that are new to the committee and maybe new to federal compliance, essentially the federal government provides a threshold for us of programs that we have to test. And we have to test a certain percentage of your expenditures on an annual basis. So since the district is not a low risk entity, we have to test 40% of your expenditures during the fiscal that were expended during the fiscal year. And essentially we rotate through all these, what we would call a major program, once every 3 years. And so this year on rotation was special ed and national school lunch. And so next year it'll rotate to other programs that are operated by the district. Just some overview here of financial statistics for the district on a government-wide basis. When you look at all the operations of the district, you have 1.7 billion in assets. And I think oftentimes when I talk to audit committees at school districts, they kind of underestimate just how big the operations are within a school district. And so at 1.7 billion in assets, that's very significant. You have a negative net position of 382 million. So your equity is negative by 382 million on a full accrual basis. And really the reason for this is because of your net pension liability and your net OPEB liability. So our pension benefits that are promised to retirees and our healthcare and retiree obligations there, those are 716 million and 196 million at June 30th, 2020. So essentially, if you had set those aside, you would have a positive net position, but because you are recognized, or you are required to recognize your proportionate share of the net pension liability there, that does take you to a negative net position. For the year ended June 30th, 2020, you have a net change in net position of a negative $12.4 million. Looking specifically at the general fund, which is typically what a district uses to do their business on a daily basis, you have a fund balance of $52.3 million, and that increased by $10.6 million from July 1st, 2019. Also significantly affecting your financial position this year is the district issued new debt, $334 million in new general obligation bonds for your capital improvement program. And then you also refunded $6.9 million in previous debt that had been outstanding in order to save the taxpayers some funds there on by reducing your interest rates on your outstanding bonds. And on the last slide here, I've got just to bring it all home here in a conclusion for you. The district's financial statements were presented fairly in all material respect without any audit adjustments. We also have no findings, and you'll find that at the back of the audit report. So again, for first year audit coming in, we found that the internal controls of the district were well operated, and we didn't find any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control to bring to the committee's attention or to report in your audit report. And again, considering everything else here in 2020, your team did an outstanding job of being responsive, being helpful and available, helping us to be able to learn the district from a remote setting and be able to still accomplish completing this CAFR timely and being able to be here today to present it to you and to the board next week.
Jeff, can you tell me real quickly what the status is of the management letter and recap of the general contents of that? Or
so, I mean, at this time, we don't have any matters that we would be bringing forth in a management letter.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead and open it up for, are we ready just to take some questions or?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can. And obviously I hope the district management will help me here in anything we get into, some of them we get into here, but we're happy to answer questions.
I have a general question on the pension liability. Can
Okay.
somebody give us a figure on how much of that is current liability?
Are you asking, well,
how much of that pension liability is expected to be paid out within the next 12 months?
I can pull that data, I think, but
Okay.
Rob may have that queued up.
It wasn't meant to be it was a curiosity question, not meant to be a stumper question. But when Jeff said we can set that aside, that's still a legitimate liability that sits there on the books.
Well, I apologize if my comments my choice of words were wrong there, but a lot of times, folks, you're sometimes that pension liability is kind of beyond your control, right? Because you're participating in the statewide pool. And so you do have you are responsible for your proportionate share. And at some point, to your point, at some point in time, that all will come due, not immediately, but at some point it will. And so you factor that aside. Everything else with the district has positive financial operations, but because of that, you kind of get a black eye and have negative net position.
And the other thing with pension liability is it's based on so many assumptions that, actuarial assumptions and growth rate assumptions. So,
maybe one way to comment back on what you might consider your current year contribution to the plan was just under $55 million.
That's helpful. Thank you.
That amount has slowly increased as well.
Yeah, Ron, the page 65 of the audited financials gives a recap, which is a combination of interesting and frightening. Basically, the pension liability that they've described, which does not include the OPEB or basically the employee benefits, is at the discount rate of 7.5%, which is basically, I assume, is your rate of expected return from PERS. It's $716 million. If that went down to 6.5%, it would be $1.1 billion. But if it went the other way and they got 8.5% return, it would be $390 million. I know that when we did this in prior year, I believe, I can't remember if it was 8% or 8.5% was PERS projected rate of return. They have a lot of money in equities and those types of things. So if the stock market goes down, they're going to be in a world of hurt. I don't think that much of that those monies are sitting in low risk fixed income, which to all of us, that would be quite obvious since you don't get 7.5% on low risk fixed income. So they're very dependent upon the equity markets continuing to fire on all cylinders.
And that's to my point, Tom, about, there's so many assumptions that go into that. The rate of return over the long term there's a range that you could probably feel comfortable with, but it's still a great deal of uncertainty surrounding that.
Yeah, it's kind of a frightening number, but it's one that everybody, I guess, is going to be living with until the basically people are contributing to something that they may never get. I don't know if Rob is getting ready to retire or if he stays awake at night thinking about it, but it is a big number.
Yeah, no, I'll be around a few more years, so it is something that's worth considering.
Sorry to ask the stumping question, but not any malice intended. It was just curiosity.
No problem.
I've got a couple of questions on the financials. And if you don't know the answer, don't worry about it. We can always figure it out later. The total expenditures for under the section on page 13 for governmental activities went up about 13%. But the facilities, and I don't know if this is related to the post new construction activities, but that went from 46 million in 2019 to 89 million in 2020, about a 92% increase. Do you know what, generally speaking, that was under the category of facilities expense?
Oh boy.
And Rob, do you want me to chime in, or do you want to speak to that specifically, or Robbie?
Anybody's fine.
So I guess I would start, and then you can expand on that if you'd like. But the facilities expenses that are reported on page 13, a good portion of that would relate to construction related projects. So and other improvements, not necessarily capitalized expenses.
Right.
So would these be funds expended to get the new schools up and running that would not be able to come out of WC1 monies? Is that fair?
They should be funds that, I guess it depends on where those individual funds came from, that were expended from, that aggregated together and be reported. This is at the district as a whole level. So it could have come from various different fund sources. We could look and get, I'm sure Robbie and Rob could be able to look into the details and identify what specific funds those were expended from, and then aggregated together to arrive at that 89 million.
Yeah. I mean, these should include all capital project funds, correct, Robbie?
Yes.
So that would include WC1 sales tax revenues that were spent on new school construction, as well as our property tax paid projects.
Right.
But if it's on construction, would that really be an expense, or?
So these are items that are not going to be capitalized that are going to arrive into this particular schedule, because this is government-wide reporting. So items that would have been capitalized are not going to show up as expenses on this page. So these are things that are, individually below the district's capitalized threshold, and then in the aggregate total to be this number, but related to facilities from a functional expense perspective.
So back to my original question, this is probably, or I guess this is mostly due to, it doubled almost over the previous year because of all the new school openings that weren't able to be capitalized, right? Sound right? Okay.
Yeah, what we had wrote a little above that chart was that in the narrative up there, we put facilities and acquisition construction increased 43 million or 92.3% due to the expenses associated with the 3 new schools that opened in August 2019. So again, that doesn't necessarily, that's just kind of an aggregate of that.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
This is
any
Ben.
any other questions?
Yeah, Tom, I actually had the same question you did, so thanks for asking that. That kind of popped at me when it doubled. This is Ben, and this may be more for Kirk, but 2 questions. A, were there any significant deficiencies or deficiencies on the radar from prior years that had to be kind of remediated this year? And maybe you could provide some color there, since that wasn't on the committee last year. And then B, can you talk about how your 2 teams kind of interact to get the audit done for me? If there's a reliance or anything. Thanks.
I don't believe there was significant deficiencies last year that had to be dealt with. There was one item, but it was not a significant deficiency to be addressed. And as far as interaction, it's more, let's say, there wasn't how do I say this? It was more just general inquiries of typical audit procedures they would do when they contacted us at this point in their game. Yeah.
Ben, if I can just add on to that, I mean, we obviously are in touch with the internal audit. We want to read their reports and any of their findings that they may have that we need to be aware of from an external audit perspective. But our external audit approach was not set up to utilize internal audit's work or anything like that in order to form our conclusions.
Thanks.
Yeah, Ben. So I can tell you a couple things we found out last year that were kind of interesting. We had been under the assumption for a number of years that the audit of the student activity funds, which you'll see takes a lot of our staff's time and all of that stuff, we thought at one point in time that saved time for the outside CPAs, because they didn't have to audit those areas, rely on internal audit. Last year during our meeting, we learned that that was not the case and that the reliance was not placed on that. It wasn't really necessary. And to be honest with you, I think the CPAs determined, rightfully so, that that was primarily it was too minuscule, too minor. The one thing that was raised that Mark Mathers is, and I'm sure Rob have done a nice job of correcting. Last year, our CPAs did make some adjustments regarding the percentage of the labor of people that were involved in the school construction WC1 monies. So basically a certain percentage of, let's say, Mark's time, purchasing's time, accounting's time, maintenance, engineering, blah, 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 etc. A certain amount of their time was charged against WC1 monies and taken out of those WC1 funds. So in other words, if somebody's salary was 100 grand, they may say, well, 30 grand of that was for this construction activities. So therefore, you know, now the school district pays 70 grand and WC1 money and an accounting entry pays 30. I think the CPAs wanted that adjusted to some degree, and Mark did a nice job of explaining and making the adjustments. And because it's not on this report here, I would assume that none of that crossed over into the fiscal 2020. So that's good. That was the other thing I recall off that meeting.
Yeah, this is Mark Mathers, CFO. Let me clarify a little bit. We actually identified that as an adjustment we needed to make. So historically, the district, when it begins to build new schools, it hires the principal a year in advance. And to do the operational planning, but also to work with the construction contractor on design decisions, color of walls, logos, that kind of a thing. And historically, the district had chosen to budget 100% of that principal's time against capital funds, assuming they were working on those construction items the whole entire year before the school opened. And what actually staff wanted to do after consulting with tax counsel and our bond counsel was go through and actually do a timesheet exercise to actually quantify the time the principal spent on capital activities versus more operational activities like developing the class schedule for next year or, you know, registrar kind of activities, those kind of things. And so we actually proactively JV cost out of the capital funds into the general fund just to recognize the actual hours spent in each type of activity. The problem we ran into is we had not budgeted for those principal times in our general fund because, again, historically the assumption was they were all capital, and that caused us to have a minor violation vis-a-vis state law in terms of the budget for that functional category. So sorry, long-winded explanation, but I wanted to explain that it was actually district staff who made that happen and who identified that.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Sure. I guess I should have added, you know, that's a new procedure going forward that we don't budget 100% of the principal's time out of that fund, and instead, you know, regularly JV cost out of the general fund into the capital fund for capital activities. So the reverse.
Okay, any other questions?
Just something to add on to Mr. Bartow's question. I'm not sure if perhaps you were asking about the schedule of finding and question costs, but any, you know, that reports on prior year matters. But there is that section in the very back of the CAFR, and there was one item that was reported on. It was a very minor thing involving a federal program, the Perkins grant, and the corrective action, the status is implemented. And, you know, frankly, when we were talking, again, we've had a change in auditors. That finding came about under I. Bailey. Whether Crow would have come up with the same finding or not last year. Perhaps not. We had talked that it was a minor event. But anyway, that finding of question, schedule of findings and question cost is the very last couple pages of the CAFR.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Okay, if there are no other, Kirk, did you have a comment?
No, I'm good. Sorry.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, Jeff, Charlie, thank you very much for joining us. This item is for possible action. So I will entertain a motion to basically take the CAFR, the annual audit, and forward it to the Board of Trustees for their approval.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I know Jeff and Charlie, you're probably going to hang on through the rest of the meeting since it's so exciting. But if you do decide to leave, we totally understand.
Great, thank you. And we'll look forward to seeing some of you at the board meeting next week, maybe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 2.06. This is the presentation of the audit of capital funds that was completed by Protiviti. And for that item, I'm going to have Kirk go ahead and kind of make the appropriate introductions and maybe provide a little bit of oversight before we go through the report and all that. So, Kirk?
Thank you. Kirk Starkey for the record. As we have several new committee members, I wanted to first provide a little background on this item for some context. Overall, in November 2016, the Washoe County voters approved a ballot question that increased the sales and use tax by 0.54%. Proceeds from the tax increase are to fund district capital projects for the acquisition, construction, repair, and renovation of school facilities. Tax collections began in April 2017, and the revenues have provided funding for several new schools, classroom additions, and certain repairs such as roofs. The district's capital projects department is tasked with the planning, delivery, and oversight of capital projects. This includes those funded by WC1 revenues. The department is also responsible for establishing proper internal controls to manage the projects. Our office was asked to secure a third-party firm to audit the district's capital improvement program. In doing so, we worked with a member from the audit committee and a member of the capital funding protection committee to craft the agreed upon procedures for the engagement. The scope of the engagement was all WC1 revenues, bond proceeds, and associated expenditures through August 31, 2019. And the objective of the engagement was to determine whether expenditures made from the public monies associated with the program align with certain laws and regulations, and to also determine if the district has implemented internal controls which would adequately safeguard the assets and ensure project completion according to construction agreements. We solicited service providers to offer cost proposals for the performance of the audit. Around February 2020, Protiviti was selected to complete the project. Protiviti is a global consulting and internal audit firm composed of experts in audit services, engineering, and construction management. I believe the report being presented today positively reflects the district's efforts in managing the WC1 funded capital projects. And before going forward, though, I want to thank the management and staff of the Capital Projects Department, purchasing, the business office, and along with the Protiviti team for all their cooperative efforts in getting this project completed. To provide more insight and discuss the methodology and report findings, I'd like to introduce Mr. John Critelli. He's the Managing Director of Capital Projects and Contracts for the Protiviti team. Also available this afternoon is Mr. Adam Searcy. He's our Chief Facilities Management Officer. So turn it over to John.
Yeah, thank you, Kirk, and good afternoon, everyone. For the record, my name is John Critelli, and as Kirk mentioned, I'm a Managing Director leading Protiviti's capital projects and contracts practice in the United States. For today's conversation, I will address our audit scope and objectives, approach, and findings associated with the capital improvement program audit, and will then be happy to address any questions or comments that the group may have. The objectives of this audit were to ascertain whether expenditures made from public monies associated with the capital improvement program align with certain regulations, and to determine if WCSD has implemented financial and administrative procedures and internal controls to safeguard assets and ensure project completion according to construction agreements. As Mr. Starkey previously indicated, our audit scope included all WC1 revenues, bond proceeds, and associated capital improvement program expenditures related to projects completed or in progress during the period of January 1st, 2017 through August 31st, 2019. We conducted our audit in accordance with the international standards for the professional practice of internal auditing, otherwise known as the IIA standards, which require that we plan and perform the audit to obtain sufficient and appropriate evidence to provide a reasonable basis for our findings and conclusions based on our audit objectives. Furthermore, an understanding of the internal control structure of WCSD was not deemed to be significant in meeting the above audit objectives. Therefore, the scope of our work did not constitute a review and evaluation of the overall internal control structure at WCSD or controls within in-scope systems from which data was obtained for this audit. WCSD management is responsible for establishing and maintaining a system of internal controls to ensure that assets are secured, financial activity is accurate and reliable, and that employees follow laws, ordinances, policies, and procedures. To achieve our previously stated audit objectives, we performed 13 individual procedures that were defined by WCSD internal audit and agreed upon before the commencement of our audit work. The agreed upon procedures were designed to address areas such as the identification of all projects and reconciliation of projects with financial records and expenditures, summarization and trending of revenues and expenditures, including analysis of funds flow, evaluation of internal controls associated with the collection and disbursement of funds, purchasing processes, project management, and change order procedures, evaluation of contractor performance against project timelines and budgets, and finally, the investigation of any unusual expenditures noted during our audit. To conduct the agreed upon procedures, we used a multi-phase approach that included document collection, data analysis, detailed control and transaction testing, and audit reporting. It's also important to note that we spent time with various members of the district to understand the processes, controls, and other procedures in place for managing these capital expenditures. As a result of our audit work, we noted the following items actually. Internal controls associated with funds collection and disbursement, purchasing, project management, and change management are appropriately designed and appear to be operating effectively for the period and scope. And based on the projects and transactions sampled and the documentation provided by the district, capital project expenditures appear to be in accordance with the requirements of WC1, charged to the proper budget categories, and recorded within the correct fiscal period. Our audit work also resulted in two findings, which I will go through now. The first is related to project performance reporting and status monitoring. During our review, we noted that the information on progress of ongoing construction projects is not clearly communicated to the public on a regular basis, aside from the annual capital improvement plan evaluation report. Relevant performance-based project information is shared publicly, but not consolidated in a single location or in readily available dashboards. Project information is currently shared on WCSD web pages and Board of Trustees meeting minutes and presentation materials, and there is not a single consolidated location to review the status of all ongoing projects to compare actual progress against proposed budgets and timelines. It is our recommendation that WCSD Capital Projects Department consider standardizing the project status communications based on project type. We also recommend that the Capital Projects Department prepare and publish a quarterly dashboard or report for public consumption that addresses items such as current projects under construction, original budget with estimated completion date, total dollar value of change orders to date, revised budgets with any revised estimated completion dates, total expenditures to date, and percentage complete for each project. For this finding, WCSD management has accepted our recommendation and indicated that they will standardize its project status communications based on project type. They also indicated that they have initiated significant revisions to the building website where relevant project information on all major projects can be found, and have also recently issued a quarterly report on major active projects, which can be found on their website as well. In response to this key finding, WCSD has indicated that they will work to streamline and create consistency with the information suggested for all active major capital projects and anticipate the implementation of this item by summer 2021. Our second and final finding relates to standardized metrics for project review and approval. During our audit, we noted that budget proposals submitted to the Capital Funding Protection Committee and the Board of Trustees for new schools do not utilize a standardized format for presenting data related to the proposed project budget for consideration prior to approval by each group. Presenting this data in an inconsistent format from project to project may cause confusion and diminish the value of presentation of key metrics to be considered prior to project approval. Capital Funding Protection Committee and the Board of Trustees presentation materials and meeting minutes do not utilize a standard template to consistently communicate project budget considerations in comparison to standard industry metrics. It is our recommendation that WCSD Capital Projects Department consider standardizing the formatting and information included in major project proposals made to the Capital Funding Protection Committee and the Board of Trustees. Proposals should also include, at a minimum, information such as square footage compared to other schools with similar enrollment size, cost per square foot compared to schools of similar size and geography built within the past 2 to 3 years, and comparisons of the original project budget approved by the Board of Trustees versus third-party estimates and construction manager at-risk estimates, along with actual dollar amounts and explanations for the variances. Based on our discussions with management, they have accepted our recommendation and indicated that they will work to implement standardized presentation of capital project costs and budgets relative to the 3 noted metrics as a point of consistency. WCSD also indicated that they have been and will continue to present multifaceted supporting information for every budgetary recommendation, noting that projects are often unique in scope and many other variables, which warrant unique supporting information in addition to the consistent metrics recommended. WCSD implements or anticipates the full implementation of these items by summer of 2021. That concludes the summary of our audit procedures and our 2 findings. I'm happy to address any questions or provide any additional commentary as needed for the group.
Thanks, Don.
Questions from the committee? Okay, so I'll apologize in advance for my questions. So I've looked at these numbers, and before the audit started, because obviously this has been in the works for a very long time, I noticed that that 2 of the middle schools were slated out at 195,000 square feet each. And basically it was trying to compare it to other schools, but it was difficult because I guess whoever did the comparisons couldn't find any schools that big. And so I know I got a hold of some numbers that were a little bit concerning, though obviously it looks like all the internal controls are in place. But for just middle schools, looking at the numbers of basically the size comparison, or basically how many square feet per student. For middle schools, the square foot per student is slated out at approximately $135 square foot per student, 135 square feet per student. And the comparison that was made was to Vegas in our same state here, and it was 98. So that was about 37% higher in Reno versus Vegas, Las Vegas. And then when we looked at the cost per square foot, once again, it was 235 per square foot for Reno, and it was 341 per square foot for Vegas. So doing a little magical math here, that's 45% higher. When you combine those 2 numbers, basically the dollar cost per student was very close to 100% higher for Reno than Vegas. I understand some of the issues with, maybe we need more heat and maybe they need more air conditioning, and cost and steel. And I've done construction in this area is pretty tough these days. Do you guys really get a gut feel that everything was good, or do you think it's design? Or, I mean, obviously, you know, the schools are bigger based upon similar occupancies. They're bigger and they're more costlier than other markets. I don't know, that my gut tells me that it makes me uncomfortable, though I can't lay my finger on exactly why. And by the way, if I take those two same metrics and apply them to high schools, the high schools are about 65% more in cost per student compared to the 100% more for middle school. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Mr. Doyle, I'll take kind of a first pass at this, and then perhaps I'll let Mr. Searcy provide some commentary as well. You know, in terms of our agreed upon procedures, we did not have agreed upon procedures with the district to benchmark costs or size of the schools. That being said, you know, we are aware of the need to understand how budgets are developed, how schools are planned for, and the processes and controls through which they must follow to become approved and then eventually built as well. We asked several questions and performed control testing related to demography reports to understand how school sizes are being projected and how those are incorporated into budgets. We also performed several tests around controls related to competitive bidding and procurement, including contracting approaches as well, and had no findings or issues from a control design or operating effective perspective. Again, our scope of work was not focused on benchmarking size or cost. So I'll defer to Adam Searcy to maybe provide some perspective there. But from a control and process perspective within our agreed upon procedures, no significant concerns from us.
Well, quick question before we have Adam go ahead and comment. Was there a who made the decision? I don't know if it's the school district or who made the decision to not include that within your scope, since obviously I'm concerned about 100% higher cost per student, and yet it wasn't something even looked at after all the years we did trying to get this audit done. It's a little disappointing, to be perfectly honest, but I don't know, maybe somebody can explain why that wasn't within your scope.
I can take that one, Tom. It was when we started this, I was working with an audit committee member when I came on board and a capital funding member, and I went through and watching board meetings of what was out there that everyone was interested in. And that wasn't at the time one of the steps or the procedures that seemed to appear. It was mainly cost driven, timelines, budgeting perspectives, change orders, the typical. So the reason that wasn't in there, that's basically on me when I drew it up. I didn't go down that road, but we still have, we'll get on the audit plan, which is the next item. We can go through that, but that's, yeah, John's right. In his scope of work, that was not an item at all.
I would assume, for a question for Protivity, when you did your work, you looked at the bidding process and the contractor selecting process. Did we look at anything, get into like the actual workforce, like, you know, bargaining unit workforce, union workforce versus, you know, maybe some of these other, the Las Vegas, Clark County School District might not be using union labor. Could that be one potential driver of the exponential cost?
Yeah, and Mr. Ellis, I don't want to opine on potential cost drivers, as that was outside of our scope, but you are right. We did look at contracting methods using the construction manager at risk approach, which is typically used for these projects. You know, contractors are selected and then portions of the scope are bought out in a competitive environment. We tested the competitive bidding process, noted that low bids were selected and that the minimum bid requirements were achieved for each of our in-scope projects. So, you know, that leads us down the path of, you know, obtaining competitive pricing given what the market will bear in the region. But again, I won't go as far as saying that there are certain drivers related to cost, just as that was outside of our scope. And I don't want to misspeak on that.
And Kirk, I think you started to say you have something on the audit plan coming up.
There is an item on the audit, a proposed item on the audit plan when, I think we have to wait till we get to that one, but,
Okay,
we can, yeah.
okay, that's fine.
Well, yeah, okay, so just a follow-up question just to let you know, before we maybe have somebody from the district to respond to the 100% difference. One of my main concerns when we started the audit process, as I expressed to everybody, was that we transfer enough knowledge and internal audit participate in enough of the actual interviews and such so that they could carry an audit plan out. Obviously, COVID-19 didn't work out too well. And in fact, I believe that Protiviti, how many visits I don't know if you made any visits at all to actually go look at the construction sites and the activity. I think you may have done some over some video walkthroughs. But my concern was that there be a knowledge transfer so that every 6 months or whatever we decide in an audit plan, internal audit can follow it up. Was there enough of a knowledge transfer that we'll be able to accomplish that so that we can lay out procedures so that, I mean, obviously this construction and the monies are going to be expended for a very long time. We were rejected by the Board of Trustees for asking for a construction auditor. So we ended up going with Protiviti, who's got a great reputation. But I just want to make sure that we're going to be able to continue the process of verifying controls and bids and all of that. I don't know who wants to speak to it, but was there enough of a knowledge transfer?
I'll take that one. I worked with John throughout the process, and John and his team have been fantastic in providing insight and let's say a version of work papers. The work papers are privileged to them, but they've provided some very helpful documents that will help us produce procedures going forward. Plus, I've done several audits in the past in this area in other places I've worked, and so it would be my responsibility to get the staff up to speed. That I don't think that'll be a problem, to be honest with you. I think we'll be okay there. And John, has been very kind to us through the whole audit, and I think if there's anything that came up, I could reach out to him for some help.
Were your staff involved in a number of the interviews?
No, not really. Due to the virtual nature of the audit, what staff they were involved in when we did the field visit. One of the staff members was present walking through that, and so got to experience, because we had with John's team basically very knowledgeable people on the other side as we're going through the schools. Ask the questions they're asking. I think were helpful to myself too. It was very learning, but the staff member learned that way as well. I think we'll be okay. As far, it would have been better obviously if we didn't have COVID, all things being equal, and if we could have the typical audit, but we just couldn't. Otherwise, we'd probably be postponing this audit for a year. So I think this was the best bet to get it done. But to answer your question, I don't know if I am. Hopefully I am. I would say that responsibility for staff to be trained up, and myself too. That's my job. We'll get there. Okay. I hope that answers.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, other questions from the other audit committee members?
I have nothing further.
Well, John, thank you very, very much for your time. And if the end result of this meeting is that we will most likely forward this report to the Board of Trustees. And so at this point in time, does anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion as soon as I get to the motion. Use the right language. I, Ronald Ellis, move that the Audit Committee accept the Washoe County School District wrong motion. Move that the Audit Committee forward the audit of the Washoe County School District Capital Improvement Program performed by Protiviti to the Board of Trustees for their consideration and acceptance.
This is Todd. I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All opposed? The report from Protiviti will be forwarded to the Board of Trustees for their review and approval. Thanks again, John, for the audit, and we appreciate coming here to, well, not coming here, but jumping on the Zoom call as we're all getting very well used to. So thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Adam, for continuing to work through the COVID stuff with the facilities. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We are now going to go to item 2.07, which is the discussion of the annual audit plan. And this is for both discussion and possible action. So I turn the Zooming over to Kirk.
Thank you, Chairman Doyle. I'm going to try and see if I get this right and do the screen share for the audit plan. Does that work? The executive.
We see it.
Yep.
Okay, great. Kirk Starkey, for the record, Chairman Doyle, members of the committee. Annually, our office submits an audit plan to the committee for your consideration. The proposed plan on the screen is included as part of your packet and contains a schedule of the audits plan for the year. Basically, the plan is structured, let's say, in 3 parts. We have the required audits.
Kirk? Before, yeah, just please define the year.
Oh, I'm sorry. For this fiscal year, 2021.
Okay, so this is through June of next year.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry about that. So basically, think of this audit plan as being put together in 3 parts. Our required audits, the audits resulting from our district-wide risk assessment process, and also we have administrative projects. The required audits are, well, they include annual charter school financial reviews. We do several school student activity fund reviews, audits, and we also following up on the implementation status of previously issued audit report recommendations. This year we have a couple, transportation, IT, property control, nutrition services, and we'll follow up on the Protiviti report in about 6 months. In addition, the audits that result from our risk assessment process, we have, there's 3 projects that are right now that are in process. One of them is the sick leave bank audit, which is pretty close to completion. And then we're working on the review of the random drug testing process at transportation and looking at the review and the controls over the school scholarship funds. In addition, the new audits that we're proposing this year include the grants department, which includes reviewing grant monitoring activities as a whole, psychological services, and we're seeking to focus on the mental health eval process. The special ed department, which is, there's a third party right now with the district called West Ed that is currently auditing them. What we would propose is that when they're done is to look at the implementation status of those recommendations. And then there's capital projects is on there. I put it on there. I didn't know how this how this would go. So it's kind of a placeholder item, but it's there because since I've been here, the committee has wanted continuous reviews of the WC1 funded activities, which is fine. On that one, as far as the scope, I'd like to work with the committee on that to see an avenue to pursue. Right now, also please note that the audits that we put on the audit plan from the risk assessment process, the process is described in your packet. Basically what we did, we took all the business units that were presented in the proposed budget for the year, And we evaluated them based upon a set of risk factors and assigned a point level to it. And the risk factors included items like budgeted expenditures, number of FTEs, time lapse since the last audit, the control environment, which the department heads helped us fill out. We did a survey question, basically a survey on that. So they helped us with input on perceived risks in those areas. And then we multiplied the risk factor score by a weighted percentage factor, added them together to arrive at an overall quantified score for each business unit. And then basically the highest scoring units then would be included as part of the plan on the screen there under the new audits area. I hope that was probably very convoluted, but I believe the process worked, and it should in the long run help us reduce the possibility of under auditing certain departments in certain areas. And then at the bottom of the sheet there, the administrative projects included we administer the whistleblower hotline in this department. So that's a project we will handle this year as well. And we have a management requested review of some accounting activities at one school. We just didn't have the resources to get to it last year, but we're going to get to it this year. And then we have it on the books still. We need an external peer review to keep up with standards. And that's one that's on there. And overall, basically the audit plan, the way it's divided out in those sections is to provide broad coverage of all district operations, but at the same time, make sure we comply with the NRS, NAC, and the board policy. So thanks for the opportunity to present this, and I'd be happy to run through it, answer any questions you may have.
Well,
Go ahead.
Tom.
Go ahead.
My question, Kirk, is obviously like getting back to the discussion of the capital projects. You have a follow-up audit, I see. Is there a way you can incorporate looking at the cost drivers in your follow-up audit?
In the follow-up, we would limit our scope on that to the 2 recommendations from Protiviti. So that would be what would be handled on the follow-up side. As far as adding it to the audit plan as a new audit or a new item to look at, yeah, we could.
What type of hour commitment or full-time equivalent commitment would that take for you?
For that area, best guess 300, 400 hours probably. It just depends. What we're finding right now with COVID, because of the topic you're talking about, is going to require, which is fine, and we can do it. It's not a problem. The surveys, like to get criteria with other jurisdictions, other localities, not everyone is back to full steam, across the country. So some of our audits have slowed down a little bit. That's the only thing. But I would anticipate by the time that I would propose that we do the follow-up first on the capital projects as issued by Protiviti. And then after the follow-ups, those items are implemented, then we could, let's say, jump back in with the capital projects audit in that area.
And just a procedural question there for you or Chairman Doyle. Would we have the opportunity to add that to the audit plan or modify the audit plan later in the cycle? If
yeah, I from my perspective, the audit plan for the year is we still go to the board, present it to the board for approval. But the audit plan it's always going to have to be a little, it's not
flexible.
It's got to be kind of an agile document to keep up with. Like during the year, we get, let's say, whistleblower items, special project items. We have to find a way to, some of those are more time sensitive to get those completed. So sometimes the audit plan gets adjusted.
Kirk, could you share your screen again?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so I know this is one of my pet peeves, but
go for it.
We're obviously full complete audits. We've had only, well, it's been a long time since we've had one presented.
Yeah.
And you've got on here your human resource audit So obviously that's going to get done. But my question here is, first question is, as I go down and I look at transportation and then the 5 new audits,
Yeah.
I know it's putting you on the spot, but
No, you're fine.
do you think you can get all of those audits started based upon what's gone on in history? And can you give me just a really, really, really rough estimate as to what % you'll think you'll be completed by end of June, which is, you know,
No,
7.5 months away. So
no, it's a great question. I know where you're. It's a great question. We will get all the required stuff up top. The charter schools have to get done. The follow-ups we got to get done, and we'll get Galena High School. You'll be getting that one shortly. We're waiting on management responses to be put in that report, and you'll get that one. And the high school student activity funds take much more time than the others, and you'll probably get a couple more student activity funds, and you'll definitely get the sick leave bank. Transportation, we might be able to get that one done too, but the new stuff, to be honest with you, probably we could get through the scholarship fund item right here. As far as the others, I don't think we're going to get through those to get those done, but they'll be on basically for the next fiscal year. What's going on is we started a new method of tracking. I hate to use use that, but we're monitoring our time better, so we know where we're expending our time to figure out how many hours are, let's say, like the charter schools to do those reviews are we using, and how many hours are the student activity funds actually taking, so I can better give you a better, let's say, not a reasonable, but maybe more true to life audit plan. Right now, this is we'd like to do it, but I just don't know, because the performance audits are taking some time, and they will, to be honest, inherently.
Okay, you're in charge of this plan, right?
Yes, sir.
So I just want to hear kind of the answer to my question. If I look at transportation, capital projects, student accounting, grants, special ed, and psychology,
yeah,
what percentage? I'm sitting here on June 30th, and you're handing me a schedule that says these are 20% done, 50% done, 10% done. Would you say they're all going to be in the 10 to 20% range?
Oh,
they're all going to be over 50%. Just go down one after another and tell me. It's a plan, right? So the plan has to include how far you're going to get in these audits if you're not going to get them completed.
No, fair enough. Let's see. I would like to start student activities, the scholarship funds. I'd say if we're not done, it would be high, like 80%, let's say, completion, 80-90%. Grants, special ed will be contingent upon, I'm not sure where they are with that outside third party audit. That shouldn't be so bad. If that's completed, we can look at it. Let's say by the time we're done at this fiscal year, maybe 50%, we could have that one about ready to go. Grants and psychological services, we probably just get started, 10%. But I hate to start other projects without finishing. There's myself and three auditors. So those are our resources. And I hate to have a bunch of projects sitting out there that are just floating, that are taking forever. I'd rather finish and then start. So I hope that helps.
Transportation is going to be completed then?
Transportation should be, we've left it alone for a lot of the COVID because they're highly impacted. And same with, we haven't really been doing a lot of face-to-face with transportation or HR to kind of let them do their work because of COVID. They've been very tasked with a lot of work in this area. But transportation, we could burn through that one pretty good, I would say. That because it's very targeted, it's one area. Yeah, like a 70%, 80%, I would say we could be there.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Good question.
I have a question, Kirk. It's kind of like a follow-up to, with the COVID situation and the, basically the way people are working. Do you get responsiveness from the audit departments, or are they dragging on it? Are there big time delays that are basically making making the internal audit function having to wait to get work done? How can you comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our in-house, our staff and peers in the other departments that we work with are fantastic. And we know they are very busy trying to get through the COVID thing. But even with that said, like with the Protiviti audit, they were purchasing, business office, capital projects. They were awesome. They were on it, and they didn't miss a beat and got that one done. And when we deal, even the schools, now the schools are back up and running, their responsiveness has been fine. Actually, it's been great. I can't speak enough about our staff, our meaning the district as a whole has been fantastic. It's on the performance audits though, when in those to find criteria, like best practices in other areas in the jurisdictions that I was talking about in the past, the other parts of the country dealing with and trying to obtain information is much, much more difficult. Why that is, I don't know. Maybe they're trying to deal with their kingdoms first before answering outside questions, but that's where we've kind of hit snags more so than internal. Internal's been fantastic. It's just like the sick leave bank, trying to get answers back on surveys and stuff from other locations has been a little slow, let's say.
Is any of that information that you're looking for, wouldn't that be publicly available?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So when we would get it on, let's say you can go online and grab from different entities, grab a lot of stuff. A lot of documents will be out there, but you don't know how current they are. You don't know. We like to find out, hey, you've got this policy. Does it work for you guys? If it works, why? Or why are you doing this? That was always the question we need answered. We can get a document of what they're doing or supposed to be doing, but we just don't. What we're trying to get at is, why are you doing it that way? What have been the roadblocks? What have been the successes? That's what we're trying to get back, and that will help us. And also to see, hey, are they even a similar type entity that we can even benchmark off of? Because if there's some structured so differently, I don't want to use them and throw policy suggestions out to our departments based upon total different type of setups. So to answer your question, yeah, we can get a lot of stuff off the internet and in other areas that way, but to get to the meat of what's behind those, that's what we've been struggling to get a hold of. That helps.
One other question. You can do it fairly quickly. The ones that you're doing student accounting and then grant special ed and psychological services, can you just give the number one or two reasons that those rose to the top in risk assessment?
Yeah, no, good question also. So let's see here. I think the way, and it might be something I have to adjust next year on the risk assessment. When we get whistleblower complaints that come in and we look at them, our office, and investigate them, if it ends up being that the complaint has merit and we can prove out the complaint, I put that on the risk assessment and it gets a level of a little extra scrutiny points, let's say. And I think on this one, we had a couple items, and I think that's what skewed these audits, and that's why they were mainly selected. That would be my, other than, let's see here, grants, other than, not special ed, wasn't for that reason. That was basically because of the program, the riskiness behind it, and what's involved with that. Capital projects was not a risk assessment item at all. It was just basically, I put it on because continuing audit committee requests.
Yeah, I was just looking for the bottom four there, so, okay.
Oh, yeah, it mainly, I think the whistleblower thing skewed it.
No, I'm sorry, I'm talking about student accounting, grant, special ed, and psychological services. So mostly it's just rumblings you hear. It's probably the best answer for that.
Well, we take all that information in, but I try to keep it for the risk assessment and the audit plan, more of it's a quantitative. So there's a methodology behind it, and that's why these guys were selected. Some of them are very big departments, very big programs, and the resources needed to carry out their objective is also part of why they would end up on there.
I have a question for Gene real quick. Gene, is it, when we go to make a motion, can I ask for a specific adjustment to this audit plan as part of that motion?
I would.
The way it's written, Neil, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, let me go back, Neil. So what I'm looking for is just maybe for the board's information, put in parentheses behind each of these as to what month it's going to start. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't have I think I can adjust the.
She was just let Neil.
Yeah, let me reread the agenda. Give me a second, if you would. Yeah, Trustees. Yeah, I think it's contemplated in the agenda that you're going to recommend to the trustees the audit plan. The audit plan is coming forward from the chief internal auditor, and seems to contemplate only logically that you would be able to make minor adjustments like that. I think if you did sweeping adjustments, it would have to come back like, oh, I'm not doing this plan and I want 10 other audits done. Obviously, that's a whole different ballgame, but something like that, I think that's fine.
Yeah, so all I need you to do then for that, and I'll make it a part of the motion once we get to a motion, is where it's applicable, mostly just put the month. Don't have to put the month you think it's going to be completed, but try to put a month in there when you say it's going to start. So for example, if you really don't think you're going to get to psychological services until the end of the fiscal year, just put down, June,
Okay.
and then just put like 6/21. And that way the board gets a feeling for about when this is all going to happen and all that. So it's just in fairness to them, they wouldn't know if it's going to start tomorrow or 8 months from now. So.
I will do that. That's not a problem. Just as a side information, I also, when I'm done, after the audit committee, I'm going to offer this up to, we have the leadership team within the district. So give it to them too, kind of as a heads up item. So so they have an idea of what's out there and what's coming. It'll go that way as also.
Okay.
Just a heads up.
I have one more question, and that's just a clarification. You have under new audits, capital projects, but then you also have a follow-up on the productivity report that we just did. Those are two separate engagements.
Yes, sir. They would be separate. So so the follow-up is just focused on the Productivity's 2 recommendations. So that would be the follow-up, all that we would do on that one. And then the new audit was one, like the committee has wanted a continuous audit of the WC1 monies, and that's why it's on there kind of.
So you could presumably then work in as part of your audit procedures the topic about benchmarking against other districts and why, and then this is just a suggestion because I do this for a living as well, and what I would do given the difficulties with COVID and getting responses, maybe plan out like the surveys that you're going to need or the information you're going to need from other outside entities and reach out to them as soon as you can. And then, it's really maddening to like have 20 projects going at one time, but really this way you never have a stopping point where, oh geez, I can't move on forward because I don't have any information that I need.
Yeah. We have enough projects though.
Yeah. Final question though, real quick is, do you have an audit software that you're using or any type of audit management system?
Yeah, we use it's a system from Thomson Reuters called Auto Audit.
Okay.
It's pretty decent. It's pretty decent. But to be honest, we wanted to, when look into another software program. There's several out there, Audit Board, Teammates, something along those lines, just to see what, if there's any productivity increases that we would garner from that, and what the costs are. That's the other thing, to see what it is. But so far, Auto Audit is pretty decent.
Okay, I'll shut up now so we can move on.
You're good.
Any other questions for the audit plan? Okay, I will go ahead and make a motion. I move that we, for the audit plan for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, to the Board of Trustees, with the addition in parentheses behind each of the audit items, to the best of his ability, for Kirk to add the month he projects that that particular audit will begin. And then, of course, a footnote as to what that month means. So that is my motion.
This is Todd, and I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion is carried. We will forward the audit plan to the Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the list is the update of the audit of the annual evaluation. Mr. Starkey. So Kirk, Chief Auditor, it's up to you.
All righty. Kirk Starkey for the record again. Chairman Doyle, members of the committee. My position requires an annual eval that involves the committee members, and I wanted basically to give you an update on that process and how it's kind of set up. First, I will complete a self-eval using a rubric rating sheet provided by the district, and then I'll submit it to each of the committee members. The rubric contains several different rating standards and criteria, along with a section for notes. But to also assist in the process, I'm asking that staff will also complete the same rubric, and then they can confidentially submit it to the committee members as well. I think it'll give you a little more input, from their perspective as well. I plan to submit the self-eval to you in December, and the staff will do the same. Then at our next committee meeting in February, you can ask any follow-up questions you may have when you see that. No problems. And then afterwards, likely a few weeks after that meeting, the committee members would individually complete and send their evals to the Board Services Department. And Board Services will then provide the evals to the President of the Board of Trustees. You don't have to remember all of this. I'll send over a process synopsis when I send you a self-eval. I just wanted to give you a heads up of what's out there basically on this item. But thank you. And if you have questions, go fire away.
Kirk, just one quick question.
Yeah.
What is the period through?
It would be, I would say, you mean when from the evaluation period?
No, the annual evaluation will be from this date to this date. What's the latter date?
I'll have to get that to you. I'm not sure. It's a good question.
I only ask, and you can check with HR, but if you're routing the eval to all the other, to all the audit committee members and our 3 new members.
Yeah.
If the eval is through the end of September.
Oh, I see what you mean.
I seriously doubt 3 of the new members they should not comment on it since they weren't here.
Okay.
I just check on that. That's all.
Okay.
Just a logistics thing.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
If it's through the end of October. If it's through the end of November, that's fine.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, that one was for discussion. Kirk, anything else to add?
No.
Any questions? Okay, moving forward to the next item. The next item on my list, it's getting a little bit dark in this part of my house, so I actually need the flashlight. Don't need glasses yet, but flashlight, yes. Next item is 2.10. 2.09, we've already abated for this meeting.
Right.
2.10, presentation of possible action to recommend the Board of Trustees accept the annual independence statement from the Chief Auditor.
Okay. I'm going to hopefully put that document up there on the screen. This item is also in your packet. So on this, Kirk Starkey for the record, sorry about that. Basically, the internal audit department operates under the standards of the Institute of Internal Auditors, the IAA, and IAA standard 1110 requires me to confirm to the board at least annually the organizational independence of the internal audit activity. So this item I'm submitting that confirms that our office properly facilitates organizational independence, and I'm seeking your approval to submit it to to submit this report to the Board of Trustees for their acceptance. And basically, that's it. Thank you. It just says so IAA has a couple. I'll probably right here is probably sorry about that. This
Okay.
here's kind of the standards and areas under the IAA standard, and then here's the corresponding board action where we have policies to meet those requirements, and we're covered on all of them. So we're sufficiently independent. So that's kind of the point of this memo.
Any questions? If there are no questions, we'll entertain a motion.
I will give you a motion, Chairman.
Okay.
I, Ronald Ellis, move that the Audit Committee forward the annual independence statement from the Chief Auditor to the Board of Trustees for their acceptance.
And I, Jennifer Thomas, second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item, 2.11, is the report on waste, fraud, and abuse. And I will ask you, Kirk, since we have new members, if you could just give a recap of what's involved in that hotline, what's involved in your investigative activities. And of course, in the past, we've had a few concerns about the fact that we don't get very many reports of waste, fraud, and abuse on the hotline, but it is displayed, I believe, at all the schools. So if you can go ahead and just recap for the new members how that works and what you do with it.
Gotcha. Thank you, Kirk Starkey for the record. The program it's a district-wide program. It allows employees, district employees, and also citizens like parents, anyone that has an issue that they believe is a matter of waste, fraud, or abuse to contact our office. And there's several methods they can use to contact the office. We have a hotline number that only rings into us, and we handle that. We have an email account. So you can submit concerns that way, and you can deliver concerns right to our office. Just a postal service that works too. There's a lot of different ways that we receive complaints, and they're confidential. It's all kept internally. What happens is that each one, there's no standard. They're all different is the best way I can say it, and they run the gamut of issues. But it depends on what it is, basically the substance of the matter, whether or not we'll decide to look into it ourselves or whether it should be better handled by other departments, like personnel matters and things like that. We tend to, that goes over to labor relations, and some go to the legal department, some go to school police. It just depends on what the area of concern is. But some we do investigate and look into. And that's kind of the process. The reason for, I think what Tom's alluding to is this is a very, in my opinion, a very large organization, and the number of cases typically doesn't look, for a very large organization, it doesn't appear that there's a lot of, let's say, whistleblower cases. But the district has several other avenues where people can report concerns that are not just waste, fraud, and abuse. So like if there's bullying, there's a bullying hotline there, and there's other district operated hotlines that run through the legal department as well, that get issues brought to their attention that do not come to ours. So this is just kind of a our workload with what we have with the hotline. And what I do with this is, because of the confidential nature of the issues, I try to keep it as give you as much information as I can, basically, and to show you what we're working on. This is part of our workload. The top of the screen, what usually in the spreadsheet, those are the cases that were outstanding at the last time we met. And so they were basically open cases. And so at this point, I put them up there to show you that, you know, we haven't forgotten about them. We're still working on them. And in this case, we had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cases from the previous time we met in February. Those cases they were open, they're closed. And the bottom section is the new cases that we've had since the last time we met. And they're up here as well. The bottom half is we've had 10 new cases since our last meeting. Seven of them we've closed, but we still got 3 we're working on. We had a couple that we classified as having, let's say, merit to the claim. And like I was saying before, if it's an item of merit that was brought forth and you know, we proved it out, we'd like to put that on. We'll keep track of that via our risk assessment methodology. But that's kind of the hotline. It's a very good tool. It's very important. It's a part of governance, in my opinion. It's part of very good governance. And like the outside accountants, the CPAs, they do ask. I mean, I always used to ask, hey, do you have a hotline? Because it brings matters to your attention. So that's our program. And what I'll continually do is like the next time we meet, these cases on the bottom would rotate to the top, and to give you an update of where those stand. If there were still any open up here on the top, they just carry until we get them completed. And there's some of them the investigations vary in time. They're very, very different. Some take obviously much longer than others. Some we were able to incorporate into, let's say, our student activity fund audit. Like recently we did that. We have a couple complaints. We were able to roll those into and address them during our student activity fund audit, typical field work there. So I think this provides a good update, and hopefully it provides you some information of the, I would say it's a good program, very good program. And we just wanted to keep the committee updated.
I think everybody can see that I've always been scratching my head with 66,000 students in a district, and all the people that support those students. We only get one issue a month. It's always been a little bit on the strange side, but it is what it is. Kirk, is there anything in the list of items going on that you find materially noteworthy you should tell us about?
On this, there's one. Let's see. What did I do? Timeout. Let me. My apologies. There was one here where my cursor's at. That one was significant and is being worked on by the district to be corrected. But to verify whether it's being corrected, I mean, we know they're working on it and correcting it, but it's a big program. That's why I put it on that area on the audit plan to follow up that way.
Okay.
Can you share any more about the circumstances without giving away the confidentiality, just the general nature of what the complaint and allegation is?
It's more of a, let's say, a process side. That's a very sensitive issue department there. So I would just say it's more process related on the district side of operational process. So I'd like to make sure that's squared away.
Okay. Any other questions?
One more. Is this an outside service, Kirk?
No, it's in-house.
It's in-house, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a preference. It was in-house when I assumed the position here. Where I previously worked, we had both. We originally had it outsourced and we brought it in-house. I love it in-house. I think it's so much better to administer. You don't have a third party. You don't know what you don't know is very true. When a third party is handling it, if you're getting everything that comes in this way, we know. I mean, there's only a couple avenues, and they're coming here. So that's why I kind of like this way. If that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Kirk.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 2, that was for discussion only. Item 2.12, this is just information only, but Kirk, do you have the Audit Committee annual meeting calendar?
Yes, let me
pull that up. And just so everybody knows, this is kind of just this is not an audit plan. This is just a calendar of what's going to go on over the next year. And so that's just generally what this is about.
Perfect. And thank you, Tom. And another key item, the dates. We do our best with the dates up here. I think these two are pretty solid. It's so you can plan and with your schedules. August and November, we'll get back to you. November will always be early in the month, as pretty much the first week because of the CAFR, the timeline associated with the CAFR. But these are, like Tom said, and if you have anything you want to add or anything like that, just reach out to us. These are not static. We can work with you. Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
And yes, everybody knows too. In the event something happens that Gene sends out an email and 5 people say, I can't make that meeting date or something like that, then under those conditions, we have the ability, if we are losing too many members, to move the dates around. So just so you know how that works. So if there's a date that causes you real problems, those dates are flexible. Yeah. Less flexible the closer we get, but they're flexible.
Good to know. Thanks, Chairman.
And hopefully we can actually meet in person the next time.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Kirk. That concludes the agenda. The closing item 3.01. Once again, if anybody has any public comments,
you take your screen down.
If there's any public out there, you are welcome to send your comments by email to the Internal Audit Department. The email is on the agenda, and those would be added into the public record and all that. So if something during the meeting, there's something you want to make a comment on, feel free to send in your commentary, and we'll add that onto the record for the meeting. And Gene, I believe those public comments before and after the meeting would be part of the minutes of the prior meeting the next time we meet, correct?
That's right. And there's no public comment at this time. It can come in at any time to this email address, and I'll forward it to you guys as I get it. But I didn't have any more come in today. So
great, thank you. So anyway, that does conclude our meeting. The next meeting is February 11th. Our meeting's always on Thursdays. So the next meeting is February 11th. It is in the main administration building if we can get together in person this time. And outside of that, I don't have a gavel, but I can pound on my computer, and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for coming, and welcome to the new board members.